Hi. I started reading classic books late last year and I fell in love with it. I've always wanted to read classic books. I just never really got around to it because it's usually very thick and very big, so it's very intimidating. Tapos, I thought all classic books would be written in Old English text. And that kind of threw me off because I don't know how to read Old English text and I don't want to pretend that I know how to read Old English text. So I just kind of gave up on it, and then eventually, like over the years, I've tried it again and I picked out a different book, and that's when I just fell in love with reading classic books. I started reading more and more. So today I will be sharing some tips that I've learned over the past months that I think would help some readers out there who wants to read classic books but don't know how to start. Also, I'm going to be giving some of my book recommendations, classic books that are very beginner friendly in my opinion, which really helped me kind of get a taste of classic books without actually taking the plunge. So they are very easy read. And yeah, let's begin. My very first tip is to find the right genre or the right story for you, because I remember when I was younger, when I first tried to read classic books, I bought a copy of The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. That really intimidated me and ended up not reading the book, and also that kind of threw me off and I never bought another classic book again. And so I really think that if you're into romance books, look into classic books that are romance themed, like Emma or Pride and Prejudice, mostly Jane Austen books. And if you're really into adventure, you can read like Sherlock Holmes, or you can read The Hobbit, or you can read, Tom Sawyer. And if you're into dystopian, you can read 1984, Animal Farm, all that. So really make sure that you know the kind of books that you enjoy reading, and that's like the first step, because you gotta enjoy what you're reading. The second tip that I have for you is to find the right edition or the right publisher, because I made a mistake the first time that I bought a classic book. I bought the cheapest one I could find in the bookstore, and it was a mass market paperback, and it's got that newspaper scent to it that really triggered my allergies. And at the time, I was so used to reading young adult books that are usually presented in like a larger book with double spacing and a larger text. So I wasn't used to reading mass market paperbacks, and that was a turn-off for me, and I just never picked up another classic book after that. So if you can find the right publisher and the right edition, just stick to that. The thing about classic books is it's published by dozens of publishers, and you can just pick the right one for you. And once you find the right publisher for you, just stick to that. Like, buy classic books from that publisher. It would look nice on your bookshelves as well. The third tip that I have is to find the right time. What I mean by that is the right timing. When I started to read classic books, I was very young. I was 14, 15, and I live in the Philippines. We don't really read Scarlet Letter at school, so I wasn't involved in that kind of reading atmosphere. I guess at that age, I wasn't really determined to read classic books. Unlike right now, I'm 28, I'm a lot older, and I can understand most of the themes that classic books have. If you can find that right moment, that right timing in your life when you're really matured enough and you've had a lot of reading experience already. I think it's time for you to give classic books a chance. So now that I've given off some of my tips, I'm going to share to you my top 5 classic books that are very beginner friendly. The first book that I would recommend is a children's book, and the reason why is because it's very thin and it's got drawings in it and it's got in a lot of other meanings, and that's why this is one of my favorite books of all time. And that book is The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupery. I don't know how to pronounce it, it's in French, but yeah, it's like over 200 pages, I think. Oh, only 135 pages, 30 pages, 130 pages average. So it would really be an easy read for you. The wordings is also that, it's because it's a children's book, it's not as complicated. So this is my first recommendation. The second book that I would recommend is Frankenstein by Shelley. I recommend this book because, again, it's very thin and it's a familiar story, so you don't really have to interpret every single sentence or every single paragraph because the story is already familiar. Also, it's very interesting how the original story changed over the years, and I love this book. I bookmarked a lot of the pages. I think this is only 200 pages, a little over 200 pages. Yeah, so this is again a good book to read, classic book to read. The third book that I would recommend is The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. This is what I was trying to say. I have 2 editions of Sherlock Holmes here. This is mass market paperback and it's by Bantam Classics. And if you can see the text, it's very thin and it's almost no spaces, so it's very hard to read. But then this edition here is from Word Cloud Classics, and look how pretty the pages are. So yeah, anyway, this is a book that I recommend because it's adventurous, again another familiar story, and it's made up of short stories, so you're not obligated to like finish an entire book. And also, it's like watching a TV show. You get 1 episode each. And then this is my favorite classic edition, and also very cheap as well. It's the Collins Classic edition. I have 2 here, also books that I recommend. One is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, and 1984, George Orwell. If you're really into dystopian, I recommend reading George Orwell's book. And this one is very, I don't know how to describe it, but the wording is very modern, I would say. Like, it's like reading from a modern author, and also very short. And it has that like very shallow story, but then it could be interpreted into a million other stories. And that's what one of the things that I really enjoy in reading classic books is that there's always a different interpretation, and I just really love interpreting things. So it gives me a lot of creativity and a lot of like leeway to formulate my own thoughts, connect my own thoughts and my own experiences to the story, and just make it really personal, and that way it resonates with me more and makes it really a unique experience. So those are the things, those are the books that I recommend for new readers out there or old readers who wants to dabble into reading classic books.